Welcome to Vancouver Now. This is Amalia Schon, and she is a family mediator, lawyer, helping people going through divorce processes and things of this nature. And it's not my world. I don't know a lot about it, but I know it's yours. So welcome, Amalia.
Amalia.
Amalia. Sorry, I couldn't get used to that a little bit. Welcome, Amalia.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and maybe shedding a little bit of light on how you operate, what you do, the impacts you can have on people's lives. This is a very sensitive topic for many people, as they're going through this type of stuff. So maybe you could share a little bit about your storyline and how you kind of started out and how you got into doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. So I started practicing family law in a litigation firm downtown, and quickly realized that the litigious adversarial approach wasn't for me. I don't find it works well with my personality and my values. And so I was working in this large boutique of family lawyers and really trying to avoid the litigation work, and ended up just taking the files that wanted or that were alternative dispute resolution files. So files that were amenable to negotiation and mediation, and passing on the litigation files to my colleagues, and ended up developing a niche for myself. And ended up doing my mediation training and my collaborative law training as well. And so that's how I got into out-of-court resolution. So I don't do any litigation. My practice is focused on, like I said, alternative dispute resolution processes. So mediation, I am a mediator, so I can mediate with couples, and I also attend at mediations as a lawyer. So with a third-party mediator, and I represent my client at mediations, and also through negotiations, we resolve files. So that would be, each party has a lawyer, and we, send offers back and forth and resolve things that way. And then also collaborative law, which is my preferred practice area, which is a formal type of alternative dispute resolution process. And the most defining feature is that so both lawyers have to be collaboratively trained.
Okay.
And then all the parties, so both spouses and their lawyers must sign a contract called a participation agreement, which is a formal legally binding contract whereby everyone agrees to stay out of court within the process. That's the most defining feature. Okay. And then if either party wants to go to court at any point, they each must retain a new lawyer. So there's a big disincentive to go to court.
Right.
Yeah, and it's based on good faith negotiations, full disclosure, respectful communication, all of that. It's interest based.
Wow, sounds like a very refreshing kind of niche and angle. I honestly, I haven't heard of this before. You see all the movies of War of the Roses and people going through their own personal nightmares, and then just kind of trying to chop the other people off at the knees. And this is obviously very, very different.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the way things are going anyways. We have legislation in our Family Law Act, I believe it's Section 8, I'd have to double check that, which puts a positive obligation on family lawyers to advise their clients of alternative dispute resolution processes, and also to make inquiries about opportunities for reconciliation. We also had our Divorce Act amended earlier last year, and that also put obligations on lawyers to seek to resolve things out of court. Some lawyers don't abide by that, but so it is in our legislation now as well. Okay. And it's really, the sort of aggressive litigation approach is usually only suitable for probably 5% of cases. Most of the time things can be resolved, and litigation is obviously costly, harmful to children, and just is usually a net loss for the family.
Right.
And it pins winners and losers, and you can't really have winners and losers when there's children, right? Because if one parent suffers, then the children are going to suffer. So, but the collaborative process has been around, I think, since at least the early 90s. And it's been actually the meeting that I was just on before this.
Updating training and different things like this.
Yeah, it was just that we have lunch and learns every month. So,
Fantastic.
and I think they were talking about collaborative process in Vancouver, and it's been in Vancouver since 1998. So it's been around for a while.
Right.
But I,
Well, what's really kind of interesting is that, as a realtor, I have fiduciary responsibilities in a whole different kind of way. And obviously you have, as a lawyer, fiduciary responsibilities to uphold and to, hold your clients' interests and help them to navigate through this challenging time. What would you say would be the biggest question or challenge that your new clients come to you with?
I think probably trying to resolve matters in a way that doesn't resolve in, winning and losing. I mean, people, have an idea that they sort of want to, I guess, win in a process or, emerge better off than the other person. And it's, especially when they're kids, having a discussion with people that there really can't be that dynamic in a family law file if you're going to resolve it at a court, and really to have consideration for maintaining relationships and co-parenting relationships primarily, because if two people are hate each other, it's going to be very hard for them to be effective co-parents, especially when they're younger children.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big piece, and just focusing on interests and moving people forward and looking at the bigger picture as opposed to smaller things that people can tend to fixate on in a separation.
Right. So you said something that was kind of interesting, that this has kind of been a mandated process that the whole industry is moving towards. You're in this niche that the industry is pushing. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if it's the industry, it's the legislature, because it's in our legislation. Yeah, so it's our law basically, right? Because the courts were really clogged, and they still are, with family law matters, right? And people, like arguing over, Christmas parenting time schedules, and like that should not be in the court system. It's a waste of resources, and it's just not suitable. And also it is so destructive to families, right? Because, and I'm sure everyone knows someone who's been through a really, really bad separation, and, it can result in addictions, mental health issues, like all sorts of things, and when that happens, I mean, I've seen it where, one party ends up like being, winning, and the other party doesn't, and there are kids. So if the losing party ends up with mental health issues or depression, like things like that, and they have children, then that invariably is going to end up, being somehow affecting the children adversely, right? And there's been so many studies of how bad conflict is for children. If they're around conflict, it causes so many other problems later in life.
Right. Yeah. Divorce is a huge issue on children, even if they don't go through conflict, right? Or I mean, there's always conflict, but even if there's no high level conflict going through the divorce proceedings, even if it's relatively amicable, and even if the parents are doing their best to make this a smooth transition of change, even then children are still having a lot of issues. Yeah.
I mean, it's still, I think it's never going to be, I don't know. I mean, obviously it would be better for children to be with parents who want to be with each other, but it's better that for children, if parents who are not doing well together separate in an amicable way, and then there's no conflict, right? I mean, it's never going to be a great thing for parents to separate, but it's far better for parents to separate and then be effective co-parents, as opposed to staying together and having the conflict, right? So and so I think that's what the legislature and I guess was reflecting on, was the amount of family disputes that were being resolved by in courts, when that's often not the best avenue, and usually ends up resulting in negative consequences for the family and for kids.
Sure.
And granted, some people do need, I mean, some files do need to be in court. I mean, those aren't the files I take.
Right.
When people, sometimes there's issues of family violence, or someone is going to be liquidating assets, or there's other sort of urgencies or emergencies.
Right.
But that's a select few of cases in the grand scheme of things.
Gotcha.
And the issue is too, is that, one person with, a set of issues can go to a lawyer like myself and we'll develop sort of a plan of resolution. I mean, there's no guarantees, but, say, look, collaborative process, mediation, some other type of out of court negotiation, versus going to a litigator who says, okay, well, let's file a notice of family claim and get this matter moving, right? And obviously those two approaches are going to have, dramatically different consequences for an individual and his or her family.
Yeah, I know one of the questions that that I have thought about, and I know that I think general public might wonder is that aren't going through this. What's the time that a normal case for you takes to mitigate or not mitigate to process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say like the typical would be from 6 to 18 months. So it ranges.
Okay. So this is no short-term fix. It's a process of helping people to come to a way of life that's different than what they've got, and that takes time to negotiate. Is that kind of the premise behind it? Is that?
Well, yeah, I mean, things take time, right? I mean, you're usually, if it was a collaborative file, for example, you're dealing with 4 different people, at least. In the collaborative file, we also have sometimes financial neutrals that we can enlist for financial issues. So they're also collaboratively trained.
Okay.
Or mental health professionals in their divorce coaches or child specialists, which we bring in to assist with co-parenting matters and child issues. So sometimes there's more than 4 people. And so, there's scheduling, there's, all the different, issues that have to be addressed. I mean, a typical family law case that has all of the issues would have parenting issues, child support issues, spousal support issues, property and debt division issues. So, and then finally divorce. So there's 4 substantive issues that need to be dealt with. And, usually what one person puts forward as their first offer or, suggestion is not going to be accepted. And there's going to be, a fair amount of back and forth and discussions over time.
Right. So it's a true negotiation, helping, I guess, well, in negotiation of life, I mean, everything's negotiable and this is no different, obviously, right? So.
Yeah, and then you have the, emotions that are, not usually present in, like a commercial negotiation, right? So those are often add another layer of complexity and usually protract the process too, because, particularly when someone's hurt, they may be less willing to, agree, even if something's reasonable, or, so, and is not, infrequently the case where, one person has left the relationship and the other person's upset that person left the relationship, and they, create roadblocks to try to resolution, right?
And that's why the variance in time from 6 to 18 months in general, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and also issues too, right? I mean, if there are, the trickiest issue in a a family law matter would be spousal support. That's usually the most contentious because no one wants to pay their ex any money. If you frame it as money for your child, it may be a little bit more tolerable, not necessarily, but oftentimes. So, for example, if 2 people have similar incomes and spousal support is not going to be negotiated, then, and if they have a fairly simple, asset and asset scenario, then, it could be fairly quick, or if they don't have any kids, right? But if there's, complexity, like numerous properties, companies, like a traditional relationship where the male works and the female stays home, and the male maybe is a higher income earner, and so there's issues of what support is going to be paid for how long, how is it going to be paid, and those are the issues that end up getting sticky. And then you might need to value a company, you might need to get an income report to determine exactly what someone's income is if, let's say, they're a controller of a company. So it can get complicated.
Yeah, it sounds that way. And hence the lengthy training that you have to go through, and the constant upgrading of policies, procedures, I guess, and governmental restrictions or changes or whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a constant process of learning and experiencing, right, and seeing what works and what doesn't, and yeah, it's a constant learning process.
For sure. So now, how long have you been doing this?
I've been a lawyer for I guess, 8 years and been practicing family law for 6.
Okay. Okay. And how many, like, how, and I guess I don't know if there's a typical or not. I know in our industry, there's no such, like, agents do from hundreds of sales to one sale, a year. And so, I mean, what's your client load annually? I mean, do you handle
I
multiple
actually
cases
don't
at a
keep
time, or
track of
you
that.
do? Yeah, I'm not trying to get that specific.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to the point of, like, do you handle multiple clients at a time, or do you usually
Oh,
focus
yeah.
on? Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, multiple, definitely multiple. I mean, I don't know
Okay.
how many active files I have, but
Okay.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the multiples of tens.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I'm just coming completely ignorant
Yeah,
on it,
yeah,
which is,
no,
I'm just curious. Yeah. Okay. And
thankfully.
yeah, right. Yeah. Lucky for me at this point. um, is what percentage of the clients that you work with are actually families or have children?
I'd say most.
Oh, okay.
Most do. Yeah, I'd say most do. I'd say
Yeah, I guess it makes
probably,
sense. You get married and you end up having families, right? So,
yeah,
okay.
I'd say probably 80%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything interesting or any questions that, like, when people come in to meet you the first time, what are some questions our audience should know to be prepared for if they're going to have a conversation with you?
Well, I think it's important to have an understanding if of when the separation occurred, because oftentimes that's a difficult or contentious issue. Because living together doesn't necessarily mean you're still together, and physical separation doesn't necessarily mean you've separated. And having an understanding of finances, what your incomes are, respective incomes are, and the general goals in mind, and your ideas for the type of process that you're looking for.
So basically come in with some baseline elements so that you can actually have an intelligent conversation about what's next from there.
Yeah, so my initial consultation is 15 minutes, and that's a free consult. So it's pretty short, but it's more meant for me to make sure that it's a good fit, and to get just a brief background of the issues. And if a client chooses to retain me, then I do have some detailed intake forms, like standard forms that I send out that garner the required information so that I can get a bit more knowledge and be in a position to provide advice.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insight. I'm sure anyone that's going through this certainly would do well to have someone like you in their corner and helping them not to go through a hellish process, but somebody that I could see would make the process a lot more simplified, and we're not going to say enjoyable, but take out some of the pain, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's never going to be a fun process,
right.
But it's can be less painful and it can be less traumatic.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I also would say that for those as well, and we didn't get a chance to discuss this, but just briefly about those entering into relationships, it's becoming more common practice to have cohabitation agreements and marriage agreements, sort of commonly known as prenups, and that's becoming more popular as well, and that's can prevent some of this on the back end if things don't work out. And luckily, people are turning their mind to it more. And I've sort of thought, recently that basic family law should be like a grade 12 course, so that everyone really understands what they're getting into in relationships. Because there's if people knew, they'd probably structure things differently. And there's only so much you can do if you're gonna have a long-term traditional relationship with kids. I mean, you can't totally contract out. I mean, you can try, but but there are certain things that you can contemplate and plan for. So that's also, so I do see people on the other end as well at the beginning of relationships too.
Right. So you're there helping people that maybe, unfortunately, maybe they've gone through it and it's a second round for them, and they've learned the hard way, right?
That's often the case. Yeah, they've been through it before and they don't want to go through it again. So that's fairly often the case.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. those new first loves, you know, are all starry-eyed and can't even envision that there'd be any pain down the road. The second
Exactly,
round,
yeah.
you're like, okay, wait, I just got some smackdown, just had a tough situation, and now we're coming back at it. And you know, I'm not giving up on love, that's for sure. But maybe I need to take care of some stuff in case I'm wrong.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, you would never into a business arrangement without, you know, a contract that, you know, set out certain terms under which you were going to engage in business. And you know, a relationship with someone is essentially, you know, it's a business transaction too, right? There's finances involved. There's, you know, a great deal of, you know, time and trust. So I mean,
Right.
you know, you have to, but you know, it's I think wise to make sure that everyone is on the same page, and you know, if there are certain things you need to, or you would like to make sure that are factored into an agreement in terms of finances, then it's a wise thing to do.